mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, 10 must-have soft skills for IT managers. Given by Manager Mechanics, that's us, and sponsored by New Horizons. We're really glad that you guys could take the time to be with us today. My name is Terry Coleman, and I'll be producing today's webinar. And before we begin, a few little housekeeping elements. Everybody is on mute, so we're not going to have any problems with background noises, dogs barking, or whatever, which is a good thing. These webinars, we do these all the time, and they've become extremely popular, and we get great feedback. And one of the feedback elements we get is that the more interactive the webinar is, the more questions that come from you, the practitioners, the better. So we urge you to ask questions at any time. To do that, just type your question into the chat box that you see at the right-hand side of your screen. And then I'll do my best to interrupt the speaker and get your question asked. So know that the questions, the things that are on your mind, other people have on their minds too, and you really add value to the time for all of us if you do that. Lastly, there is an archive which New Horizons makes available so that if you think that this webinar would be of value to colleagues, you can certainly help them take advantage of it at some time. Or if you'd like to review some of the things we talked about at a later time, that archive is there and you'll get a notification of that. Okay, so one last thing before we begin. Manager Mechanics and New Horizons partner together to produce these webinars every month. They are part of what we call the IT Management Series. So I just want to let you know the next webinar is February 11th, The Rise of the DBA and the Data Integrator. These are really interesting things that focus on the changes in our industry. And in March 11th, Cloud Computing's role in the golden age of business analysts. I guess, you know, we are in a golden age of business analysts, so that could be a very interesting conversation. In addition, the IT Management and Leadership certifications that we offer online live through New Horizons also happen every month. And so we have one that will be happening later this week, actually begins tomorrow, which is an IT Management and Leadership Professional Certification class. So it's a 3-day boot camp that prepares people to take a certification exam, which is included in the cost. As you'll see, that free certification exam offer is still going on, so don't miss that. Take advantage of it. And then on March 18th, 19th, and 20th, the IT Management and Leadership Executive Certification Boot Camp will be running. Again, a 3-day boot camp designed for more senior IT management professionals. So consider thinking about whether these could be of value to you in your career. The feedback that we get from these online live classes is fantastic. In addition, keep in touch with your New Horizons rep and be alert for some upcoming new classes. We're going to be working together, New Horizons and Manager Mechanics, to offer some really exciting one-day classes for those of you who find 3 days a little bit challenging with your schedules. So be alert for those. You'll be hearing about them shortly, and we're really looking forward to running those online live classes. So keep in touch with your New Horizons rep so that you'll be alerted to those things as soon as they become available. Okay, let me take a minute to introduce our speaker for today's webinar in the IT Management Series. Eric is the president and founder of our company, Manager Mechanics, and is a former CIO. Eric came up through the ranks. He started as a code writer, and after 25, 30 years became CIO, Senior IT Executive, and it is from that experience that he speaks to us today. He's also the author of a couple of books, Manager Mechanics, Tips and Techniques for First-Time Managers, Your IT Career, How to Get Noticed, Promoted, and Build Your Professional Brand, and the newest book, A CIO's Guide to Staff Needs, Growth, and Productivity. Eric's taught at a bunch of local colleges. He's got a column that's nationally syndicated in Gatehouse Media. And really exciting, he is doing IDC work. He's an IDC, Adjunct Research Advisor, in the topic area of IT staffing strategies, you know, really right along the lines of what he'll be speaking about today. So, Eric, I'll turn this webinar over to you.
Thank you, Terry, and welcome all. Terry, I'm assuming you can hear me?
I can.
Great. What I'd like to do is, today's webinar is 10 must-have soft skills for IT managers. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through them one at a time. And as we go through these, you'll see that there are various, decided to include conflict management because I love this graphic. I won't leave it up too long because, well, quite frankly, it freaks me out. But anyway, is that the goal of this class is basically we're not going to be able to make you experts in these 10 specific soft skills during a 1-hour period. So what we'll be doing is we're touching upon them just to give you an idea of where to look, what to know of, sort of the idea of making sure that you at least know the topical areas to be considered. My one shameless plug is actually these are all based on the material in these slides are actually excerpts from content contained in either the MLP or MLE, specifically obviously related to soft skills. And actually a little bit more information can be found on this free online. In fact, this is based on a column that I wrote fairly recently for IT World called, as you might imagine, 10 must-have soft skills for IT managers. So I'd like to begin with the first one. Again, as Terry said, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box associated with the webinar screen, and would love to answer your questions. And I can guarantee you one thing is if there's one thing that Terry absolutely loves, it's interrupting me as much as possible with great questions from you guys. So the first, I'm sorry, Terry?
I said exactly.
Oh, okay. Anyway. The first of these, the first of the 10, number 1, is conflict management. Now, how conflict comes around is it's in a number of ways. And let me also say, by the way, some conflict is good. You know, when you have different people coming in with different opinions and, you know, different diverse backgrounds on how to move forward from a topic, diversity can actually, in many ways, if treated correctly, this conflict can actually drive better products and a deeper, higher quality of innovation within your organization. So sometimes it's, you know, I hate you, you hate me kind of thing, but in many cases, again, depending on how it's managed, it can really be to the advantage of the company, the department, your project, and quite frankly, you as the manager. I'm going to give you some example causes, the first of which is IT goal differences. I'm going to give you an example of this. Now, the first example is, the first example here is, let's say you're a software developer, and I can speak of software developers because you can always pick on your own, and that's actually how I went up the IT management ranks, is when I was asked how many servers do I need in order to build this new piece of software. Say I have a staff of 5 or 6 people or 10 or whatever. Well, the answer is how many servers you got. The reason is because, you know, as a software developer, my only goal is to develop the best possible software in the appropriate time with the best people. So as a result of that, if I can get server class machines on people's desktops, if I can get half a dozen nice servers in the data center, 2 or 3 for the testing group, one that we can use for smoke test before we move live, a really big honking box, that's the official technical term, in the data center, and then an equivalent size big box in the disaster recovery area, that makes me happy. Why? Because the more computer power, the faster you work, the more effective my team can be. That's one side of the coin. Now let's look at the other side of the coin, and that is someone working in the data center. How they're being goaled is on server consolidation. So I walk into the person running the data center and say, hey Joe, I want 10 servers for this new application that I'm working on. His bonus is based on how many servers he reduces, not adds. So there is an example of a conflict based on our particular job types and roles. So what happens is that in working with him, this is part conflict management, part negotiation, but we have to come up with a way that gives me the computer power that I need and gets Joe the ability to not be installing servers left and right and making it less likely that he'll be receiving his bonus. So that's one type in the workplace where goals of people are different. So again, that's not a bad thing, because if you think about it, as Joe and I are discussing this particular item, what's going to happen? We're going to maybe say, gee, I wonder if we can use server consolidation. At the end of the day, do I need physical boxes, or do I need gen environments that could be done via VMware, for example? The next is limited resources. What happens is let's say that there's only so much budget. Let's say that myself and there's someone on the line named Mitch. Hello, Mitch. Let's say that Mitch and I are both managers reporting into Terry. And there's only so many dollars in the training budget, say $20,000. And I would like 15 of it, and Mitch would like 15 of it. The problem is that there's only 20. So what happens is there's now conflict between Mitch and I related to limited resources, in that case dollars. It could be dollars, it could be people, it could be number of licenses for a given of a given type of software into an organization, it could be number of CPUs allocated through VMware to your software, it could be anything. But basically is that difficulties can come up when multiple people are vying for a limited resource. The next is personality differences. Sometimes, people just don't get along. One thing I can feel comfortable about this, about everyone on the call, is we were all third graders once. And who did we play with in third grade? We played with the people that we liked and that liked us. And there were some kids that we really liked, but they didn't like us. Or at least that was the case for me, and they wouldn't let me play with them. There were other kids who really liked us, but we didn't really like them because they weren't cool enough or whatever it was. Keep in mind, we're talking 8-year-old kids. Well, you know what? We're all 8-year-olds grown up. Certainly everyone tries to get along in the workplace, but just human nature is some people get along better with than others, and conflicts in personalities can come up. I'm going to give you actually a real-life example that happened to me. It was about maybe 15, 20 years ago, and I took on I was the head of a manager of IT supporting a business area. Now, when I first met I was moved into the job. It was a promotion for me, actually, and the woman who was heading the business side. So basically, my job was to provide automation for her department, and from the second we met, she just looked at me with, I wouldn't say dislike, I wouldn't even say hate, I'd say disdain. From the second she looked at me, I could just see her face and just her body language just cringe, like, oh my God, I have to work with this guy. I had no idea what I had done to make her have this, opinion of me. So anyway, is that about 2 or 3 weeks go by, I'm trying to be nice to her, I just had no idea what I did wrong. And now keep in mind, is my job description says make her and her department happy from a technology perspective. It was keeping me up nights. So finally what I did is that I went to her office and said to her, as I said, forgive me, I don't know what I did to offend you, but certainly it was accidental. Can we start over? I could see we started off on the wrong foot. I truly apologize for what I did wrong. And she looked at me, sort of looked down, sort of sheepishly laughed, and she said to me, she says, oh, yeah, you can feel how I've been looking at you, haven't, can't you? And I said, yes, I'm so sorry, whatever I did, again, it was total, I had no idea. It was totally accidental. Please accept my apology. And she starts laughing. I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I do? So she says to me, she says, actually, the problem has nothing to do with you. The problem actually has to do with me. And I said, what do you mean? She says, you look exactly like my ex-husband. So there's a case where there was conflict in the workplace, had nothing to do with anything other than this person's, previous history. Now, once that, as they say, white elephant, we discussed that white elephant in the room, it actually became a joke between us. We got that out of the way, and she says to me, I promise that I'll be nicer to you under one condition. I said, of course, what? She says, is that if I ever get mad at you and call you Jeff, you know that I'm thinking about my ex-husband and not you. So there's an example that we're all people, so that happens. Another is personal values. By personal values, what those are is work-life balance. Some people like to work, are willing to, or in a personal position where they can work more than others, and that can cause conflict between people. Another is level of risk. Like, for example, is you're going with a vendor. Let's say that Terry's very conservative, and I'm a little bit more willing to take on risk from a business perspective. Terry and I, as you know from the intro, we work together. Terry may say, hey, you know what? We really should go with this big company that we think that the service will be good. The product isn't quite as good, but they're steady. There's very little risk of going with them. And I may say, gee, you know what? I like Company B as our vendor. The reason being is because their product's a lot better. Yeah, there's a little bit of risk associated with it, but I feel okay with that. So there, that actually is sort of a personal values in regarding to calculated business risk. It's not good person, bad person. It's just different. And lastly, geographic divides. What those are is people who are in different cities or different countries working on the same team. What happens is that there's the phenomenon of sort of local team. It's not about all of us. It's sort of us against you or us with you as at a higher level. So as a result, just the fact of different locations can in fact cause stress between groups. Now, best advice for this is, first of all, is to recognize and avoid the conflict spiral. What the conflict spiral is it's basically when things get worse and worse and worse. It used to be that, for example, that you're testing software, and it's, these two bugs need to be fixed. No, they don't need to be fixed. They're fine. And then what happens is it breaks down a level. And then the tester, who's now exasperated with me that say that I don't want to fix these bugs, says, you know what? Is that while you're at it, you should fix the user interface because that doesn't really run smoothly. And you know what? All the software you do stinks. In fact, what happens is that the cause of the conflict, you can see it between people, between companies, between countries, you can even see it, is what happens is it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It starts out with a little issue that basically grows to be a more general related issue, grows to bring on additional topics, and then it really just becomes me against you, and we don't even remember what we were arguing about in the first place. Now, when you see that happening, what you want to do is you want to recognize it, minimize it, and then try to reduce it, bring it to the top of the spiral rather than let it spiral down and get worse. The next is remember the acronym VACE. This is great from a tech support perspective also. Someone calls you up and they're really mad, or it could be any situation where someone comes and confronts you in a conflictive type manner. The first thing you do is let them vent. That's obviously the V. Will you let them sit back and just let them talk? Have you ever had that? Let's say that you have a Verizon cell phone. By the way, I'm going to be talking about various companies. I'll mention Oracle, I'll mention Microsoft, Asus, whoever. Just know I'm using them as examples. It sounds much better than saying Company X. I have no particular agenda. But anyway, is that where you go in and you say, you're mad at them, you let them vent, you yell and scream at them on the phone for 20 minutes, then you feel better. Well, why are they quiet? Because they know to do that. They know about VACE. You acknowledge, after they vent, then you acknowledge that they have an issue. You help them solve that issue, and then you educate them on how to stop that from happening again. Next is you want to use how and what questions. What those are is how questions is because you want to engage them. You want to say, well, how do you think this should be done? How do you think we can fix this? Things along this line. And then regarding I, you say, I didn't personally cause the issue, but let's work together to try to solve it. Or I don't really like how you're speaking to me in this case. Can we try to be a little nicer to each other? But anyway, here's some quick advice on ways to deal with conflict. Again, this in itself is obviously a whole class in itself, but a few takeaways. In fact, as we move into the next one, negotiation skills, my goal is I hope you have your pencils and paper sitting there, because I'm going to be shooting through lots of quick topics and lots of quick pieces of advice. Next is negotiation skills. Now, one thing great about negotiation skills, and by the way, this also is true for conflict resolution, as well as many other soft skill related things you learn at the office, is they're also great at home. And I'll give you a story on this one, is that I was teaching a negotiation class once, private for a private client, and said to the people in the room, who's just signed up internally. And I said to them, let's go around the room, and I want to know sort of what you'd like to get out of this negotiation class. Who do you negotiate with in the office? One says, oh, I'm on vendor management, I deal with vendors. Another one said, I deal with business users, blah, blah, blah. And then I got to one guy, and I said to him, oh, well, how do you use negotiation in the business place? And he says, I don't, but I'm buying a car in about 3 weeks, and I figure if I take this class now, it might save me a few bucks. So there's the perfect, example, the poster child for negotiation being available being both a work and personal skill. Now, next this is actually the name of his book, Chester here, Karras. And what it is that in business, as in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And I find that, very, very true and very telling in regard to why negotiation skills are important. It could be in regard to your next raise. It could be in regard to if you switch companies on the hours you work or the job you get or the job title or any one of a million topics. But the ability to negotiate well is a huge personal as well as professional advantage. Now, some quick advice. The first is you want to adopt a win-win attitude. What that means is it doesn't mean that I'm going to get everything I want and you're going to get everything you want. But what it does mean is at the end of it, we both feel like it was okay. I got most of what I needed, you got most of what you needed, and, neither person, it's a headset issue. Neither of us felt like we were taken advantage of, and so on. There's actually a great book, Getting to Yes, where they talk about win-win. Now, that's opposed to win-lose. It was where you want to win everything. There were 10 just topics being discussed, and you just want to get all 10. You only really need 3 or 4. The rest you don't care about, but you want all 10 because it's sport. The lose-win is where you're saying, oh, you know what, I just hate to negotiate. Whatever they want to do is okay with me. And what that does is that means you're going into the negotiation basically because the pain with it is that the pain of dealing with the circumstances of a bad negotiation is less painful to you than the pain associated with the negotiation itself. The next is learn negotiation techniques. There are many. I'll give you an example of one. You're just about to buy that car, and you say, you know what, is that that you have the pen in your hand, you've already negotiated the price, and say, you know what, I'll sign it, but will you throw in a roof rack? And what that is, that nibbling is anticipation of signing the contract. What you're doing is trying to get the opposing person to throw in a few additional items. Now, negotiation skills and tricks like this work in both ways. If you know about them, then you can use them. But also, if you know about them, you can defend against them. In other words, when people are using these techniques on you, you can then say to them, no, you know what, happy to throw in the roof rack, but it's going to cost you another $200. That's basically me saying to the other person, no, I'm not going to let you do nibbling on me and throw things in at the end just in anticipation of the contract. Not like anyone would ever say those words, but you get the idea. The next is know the topic you're negotiating. If you're negotiating for the purchase of a new SAN for the data center or for a new piece of software with virtual different options and features in it, if you're negotiating it, make sure you know what you're talking about. Don't allow the vendor or the person you're negotiating with be the subject matter expert on the topic. Next is, whoops, sorry about that. Next is is use logic, not facts. And what I mean by that is that you don't want to be going there and getting mad and so on. Always look at it from a business perspective. That's why they have live auctions, Because let's say that, that Joe and I are at an auction, and there's something that we could go to Walmart and buy for $50. But at the end of it, I'm really excited because I bought it for $80. Why? Well, because Joe didn't get it, so I beat Joe. That was an emotional buy, not a factual buy. The factual buy would have been, hey, you know what? I've gotten to $50, which is the price of the product. You know what? I won't spend any more money on this because I know I can get it down the street for this price. They say that people buy with emotions and then justify it with logic. Next is solve easy problems first. And what that is that's the idea of, if you're familiar with putting things in the parking lot. Basically, if you have 5 or 10 things that you're negotiating and you get stuck on the first item, this is great in meetings too, staff meetings and such. You can't get by the first item, you say, hey, you know what, let's put it to the end. I'll put it in the parking lot. You build some momentum by getting some other things going, and then when you come back to that issue, it's not as tough. And then lastly, know your BATNA. Everything has to have acronyms. This stands for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In other words, if this agreement falls through, what do we do next? This is a smattering of just different little pieces of negotiation advice. If this resonated with you, that either through our classes or somewhere else, it would be well worth your while to enhance your negotiation skills. Number 3, vendor management. Now, what happens is that we like to classify vendors into 3 types. Now, the reason that this is listed as a soft skill is for 2 reasons. One of which is that it's 100% combination of negotiation, conflict management, planning. To do vendor management correctly employs at least half a dozen different kind of soft skills. Second of all, in the IT megatrends going on in the industry right now, as IT organizations are moving more toward the purchase of cloud computing and other external services, etc., is that more and more a bigger and bigger role of IT people, particularly business analysts and project managers, is related to vendor management as opposed to core tech type activities. We like to break vendors into 3 types: providers, strategic partners, and one-time vendors. A provider is you're buying pens. You can buy pens from Staples, or you can buy pens from WB Mason. I think it's WB. WB Mason. You can buy the same big pen from them both. So if one company falls down, you can get them from the others. If one has it cheaper, you can get it from the other. So as a result, these type vendors, you basically want to negotiate on price. Other things behind the scenes, there are other things you should consider when evaluating them. But for here, I'll just say that evaluating that type of provider is basically based on ability and price. The next is a strategic partner. What a strategic partner is basically anything that's a non-commodity type product. So I'm going to give you an example of this from a software perspective and why you have to really define who your strategic partners are and know lots of different things about them, like the percent of research and development that they're putting into their products, the direction of that product. And an example of is this. A long time ago, I was a programmer in Visual Basic 3.0. For anybody who programmed in that, it was an awesome technology for its day. And it was around for a very long time and became effectively the staple, except for Power Builder, which actually I also knew was a great product. But anyway, Visual Basic was sort of, in many places, the staple of software that was built for internal use or sale. What happened is that when they went from VB3, Microsoft, from Visual Basic 3 to Visual Basic 4, they made major changes to the underlying technology platform. When they did, none of the add-in products that were compatible with version 3 would run with version 4. Well, what we did was we had some great add-ins that we had been using for years in version 3. When they went to version 4, it caused us major pain because one particular add-in we bought was the company had basically gone out of business. We didn't know it. It was a little graphics package. And even though the package cost us like $50, it cost us about $75,000 to re-engineer the software in the 85 places we used it. That's how strategic partners are considered. If you have Oracle databases throughout your data center, like it or not, Oracle is a strategic partner of yours. And the next is one-time vendors. What a one-time vendor is it's basically you want hats for the holiday party. As long as they deliver the hats and they have the right logo on the front, you're happy. So these, if you look at it from these three perspectives, is that each one requires a different type of scrutiny, a different type of evaluation process, and different ways that you deal with them in the marketplace. The next is I would assume that your firms have what they call approved vendor and product lists. What those are is that basically it's a central purchasing group would say, all right, everybody, if you want to buy pens, the approved vendor list for the approved vendors in the office space area is Office Depot and Staples. That means anything that you want to buy related to those type of products, you have to get from one of those two companies. Now, the approved product list would be which pens you can buy. Why? Because the company may have made a decision that they don't want anyone to buy pens that has pen caps. Why? Because pen caps can land on the floor. If they fall off the pen, people can trip on them, and it's a safety hazard. I'm just making it up, you know, trying to have a little bit of fun with you. But the thing is that for compatibility purposes, you certainly have that on the technology side. You have standards regarding computer hardware you can buy, regarding screens that you purchase, regarding disk drives and memory types, and all of that is there is to both reduce costs because you can do volume discounting in the negotiations, but what you can also do is it helps keep compatibility within your IT shop. The next is every firm has or should have their own vendor management life cycle. What that does is it's basically all of the steps that you have to go through internally from the time you make the business case where you're basically raising your hand and says, hey, I want to spend $10,000 on a vendor to do X. You need approval for that. And you should find out what the process is in your company. Does your boss have the ability to approve 10 grand? If the answer is yes, then you only have to bring it to your boss's level. If no, you may need another whole level of scrutiny to bring it up a couple of levels in the organization, depending on who has that signature authority. And then you go through the creation of the needed service level agreements, the requests for proposals, the evaluation of the proposals, and so on through that process. So what happens is here is that know your process. Find out what that is, because then when you ultimately go to purchase things, you'll be able to know how to, as they say, line your ducks up in a row to make sure that that purchase can be made. And lastly, vendor oversight. Depending on the side of the contract, companies that have quality vendor management processes, what they do is that they have the combination of legal, compliance, senior management on both the IT and the business side, basically overseeing and doing due diligence on this project over time to assure that that the vendor is delivering, that their costs aren't overrunning, etc. Number 4, active listening. Hopefully you're active listening to me now, but anyway, what active listening is, actually you can't, because active listening requires not only that you listen, but you engage back to the person you're listening with. But there's a couple of just thoughts that I'd like to bring to you up front here. The first of which is it's better to be interested than interesting. What that means is that as you're meeting new people, whether business or personal, this is actually a great life skill also, is that ask questions of people. Think about it, of people that you've met. Some people, they just, they turn on what I like to think of as radio station WIIFM, what's in it for me? And, their type discussions are, well, enough about me. What do you think of me? But what that means is when you talk to someone like this, you very much say, wait a minute, all right, yeah, I talked to the guy for an hour and he never asked me a thing about myself. Think about conversations you've had with people where they seemed interested in you. Would say, oh, where did you grow up? Oh, how was the family? Whatever it might be. How long you've been here at the company, and so on. Is that asking good questions can make people feel better about you from both a competency and a personal perspective than in many cases even having the right answers. And the next this is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Again, you want to be listening, you want to be paying attention both to your staff, to your boss, to your peers, and to those in the business community that your systems are serving. Now, who will you be listening to? It could be your business partners, it could be your manager, it could be your staff. It's basically anyone that you're interacting with. This could also be your spouse or your kids. Now, the active listening topology has three basic steps, or three basic levels, I should say. Repeating, paraphrasing, and then reflecting. At the lowest level, and I love doing this to people, what this is you get those cold calls, anything from a chimney sweep to if you call in on tech support. You call in and you say, hello, tech support, I'm having trouble with my PC. If you hear them say back to you, oh, I understand that you're having trouble with your PC, that is a level 1. I always actually find it quite aggravating. Excuse me, but that is level 1 of active listening. It's repeating. So what I like to do when I get one of those, when I'm on one of those conversations where I say, yes, I'm having trouble with my PC, and the reply to me is, oh, I understand you're having trouble with your PC. I like to reply by saying, I'm glad that you understand I'm having trouble with my PC. See if I can get them to say, I understand that you're glad that I understand that you're, and try to get them to sort of do the parrot thing, but usually they get all flustered and it brings them off topic. But anyway, paraphrasing is where you're trying to now, the first one you're trying to make sure you understand the words they said. Paraphrasing is when you want to understand their meaning. So someone would, I would say to them, hey, I call up and my PC's down. They may paraphrase that back to me by saying, oh, do you mean that that when you try to turn the PC on, it won't power up? So what that is it's not only showing that you're listening to them, but it's letting you get additional clarification to assure you understand what they said. And then reflecting is where you're basically putting personal emotion and empathy into it. Where you say, oh, wow, am I correct? Is your PC's down? That must be awful. I bet you have a lot to get done today. So what it is, it's a more engaging conversation, and you're bringing it beyond just the specific facts that are said. Again, each one of these could be a half-day topic in itself. So I'm whipping through it again with the understanding of giving you a little of each. Any questions that come in, please remember to throw them into the or type them into the text area. And Terry, as mentioned, will be more than happy to interrupt me.
Eric.
Sounds like she is.
Yeah, I was just waiting. We do have a question here about the last slide.
Yes.
I work in healthcare in IT, and we have a culture which is very frustrating. We have a culture of interrupting all the time. Do you have any advice for me?
Yes, that's a great question, by the way. Thank you. Is that you can't stop other people from interrupting you, but what you can do is you can set a precedent on not interrupting them, letting them finish, hearing what people have to say. And in fact, what happens is that if you do that, particularly in an environment where people talk over each other and you're willing to listen, that can have dramatic advantages to you for building your personal professional brand at the company. Like, wow, you know what? When I call, I'll just pick on Terry, who read the question from the person, is that, you know what, when I talk to Terry and ask her a question, she really listens to me before answering. I really think that she cares, back to the top of the slide, and I really think that she wants to understand my issue to answer me correctly. As the old expression goes, is that God gave us one mouth and 2 ears, so we should listen twice as much as we talk. But you set the precedent on it, and if that differentiates you from everyone else in the office, that's a good thing. So you can use that to your strategic professional advantage. Presentation skills. There's been various studies that say the one thing that scares people more than death is public speaking. On a percentage type basis, is that your ability to speak in front of a group has enormous advantages to you professionally. Because if you think about it, who are the people you're making presentations to? They really loosely fall into one of 3 categories. The first of which is people who impact your future. In other words, you're at the company, if you're making a presentation on how a project is going or something along that line, who are you presenting to? You're presenting to your boss, maybe your boss's boss, maybe senior people in other parts of the company, the stakeholders on your projects. So what happens is you want to make a positive impression on these people. This is your chance. Next is that it's the people who impact your resources and projects. For example, you're making a presentation in front of a room to get a project approved. Basically, you've raised your hand and say, hey, I have a really good idea and I want money and people to work on it. That's what basically that is that your ability to articulate properly, both in the physical presentation, namely the component, the PowerPoint stuff, as well as your ability in front of the room, can make a huge difference on whether your project is funded or not. And the third is people whose future you impact. You're trying to motivate your staff. Your ability to make presentations in front of them or just speak in front of them has enormous impact on how well your staff can be motivated, on whether people want to work for you, and so on. So it's people get to see you in bulk here, and if you're cowering and afraid to present, it doesn't bring over a particularly professional or, quite frankly, a particularly competent view of you. Now, what you need to do is for your presentations is that there's 4 primary areas where you need to pay attention. The first of which is it's the data and concept collection. What that is basically what's the content of the presentation going to be. If you're talking about, for example, say it's a business case to get a project funded, then you're going to need things regarding the specific resources you want, any vendor products you need to purchase. You need the budget items there. Potentially you have an ROI, a return on investment hurdle that you have to get over, or 5% or 6% or 10% or whatever it is, in order for the project to get funded. So you have to have the right information in there. So basically what that one comes down to is do your homework. The second is it's the presentation design. I'm going to give you an example of this, and I'm going to use Jay Leno. The data and content collection is the 10 jokes that he's going to say in the monologue. Then what happens is, I don't know if you know this, I found it fascinating. I learned it actually as part of public speaking courses that I took. Is that now next time you watch Jay Leno or any of these guys, you'll see this if you pay attention. What they do is they say their second best joke first. This is the design of the monologue. They do the second best joke first. Why? Because they want to get you engaged. They want to get you hooked in. And then what they do is that they have, various jokes through the middle that like every second or third joke, it'd be a good one and then an okay one, maybe another okay one, and then another really good one, and then another okay one, another okay one. And then what they do is they save their best joke for last. Why? Because that's what people remember. They don't remember the third joke. The first one got them engaged, and then the last one got you remembered. So certainly, I would assume when you're making business cases to your manager, you're not trying to be a stand-up comic, even though I've seen some that have come across that way, is that whatever the design is, sit back purposely and say, okay, I want to talk about the money first because that's not as much of an issue. If I can get that to be a yes, it'll be easier for me to get the human resources I want, etc. So design the structure of how you want the presentation to go. Third item is creation. How are your PowerPoint skills? Are they any good? And so on. So, make sure the presentation is clean. You don't do that death by PowerPoint thing, and so on, and that it's structured well. And lastly is delivery. Practice it in front of the mirror. What I'd say to you is if you're a very poor public speaker and would like to improve it, go to Toastmasters. It's the best deal in town. I'm not a member of Toastmasters. As you saw in my bio, I'm actually president-elect of National Speakers Association New England. But Toastmasters is an awesome organization to gain your speaking capabilities. Next, delegation. Now, delegation can be really hard to do. Why? Because leading the work is very different than doing the work. In other words, what you have to begin to do is you have to not feel guilty when you're asking people to do things for you. It's their job to do what you say, and it's your job to tell them what to do. Certainly you can support, you can be involved, etc. But that's one reason as people move from individual contributor where you're doing all the work to telling other people can feel a little uncomfortable. Next, one that's very particular to IT professionals is relying on your team's ability. In other words, let's say that you're a Java programmer, you're promoted, and there's a .NET project going on. You can't program in .NET, you've never done it, but you've just committed to a business user that a .NET project will be done in 3 weeks. The only way that you will be successful is if your .NET programmer can deliver the goods. That feels very uncomfortable, and also from a human nature perspective, lots of people like to keep more control. As opposed to why it's important to delegate is because if you don't, your staff gets mad that you're not giving them any good things to do, and you'll burn yourself out if you try to do everything yourself. And usually if you're doing the individual tasks yourself, it means you're not managing effectively because you don't have the time. Suggestions? Just do it. If you don't like to delegate, just do it and do it and do it. Go a little bit outside your comfort zone. Occasionally, you'll feel good about it. Hey, let's think about it. One of the nicest things about being a manager is you can ask other people to do stuff that you don't want to do. But I'm saying that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but there's a little truth to it too. Now, the 3 parts of every job and multitasking versus single tasking. What I'll say is that I'm going to speak on these at a very high level. But if you go to the Knowledge Center in Manager Mechanics, you'll look at under the columns, is that you'll see these. These are actually quite large conceptual topics, but I'm going to speak on them very quickly. From a delegation perspective, okay, think of your job, whatever your job is right now. It has 3 parts. The stuff, if you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. In other words, you're filling out your expense report, stuff like that. Your core job description, your core competency of what you were hired to do. And then those things you want to do to get promoted. Well, for the people that work in your group, the bottom third of your job, in many cases, may be the top third of their job. So what you can do is if you delegate in a smart way the things that you don't want to do that would be great for the people in your staff, it gives you more time to do the things your core job as well as your things for aspirations for future career growth. And at the same time, your staff is really happy with you because you're giving them good things to work on. Multitasking and single tasking, what I'll say to you is know who in your team is a multitasker, who is a single tasker, and then when you assign them projects and particular roles within your department, make sure you're playing to their strengths, not their weaknesses. Again, we've written whole papers on these topics, but I wanted to give you a smattering of what they are under delegation. Number 7, leading without authority. As far as what it is that if you have dotted line resources, that's what it is. You have to get people to do things that you want them to do, regardless of if you have physical authority over them, sort of, in other words, they report to you solid line. That's a skill that's of great value. If you've never heard of the art of politics is letting other people do things your way. That's what leading without authority is. Now, why it's hard is because everyone has their own agendas. Because not only do you have the people that are dotted line to you, for example, or that are in the business community, you need 4 business users to be testing a new piece of software that you just wrote, or things along that line, or you may need the data center to get a new machine out there for you or get a new environment. They don't report to you, but you need their assistance to get your job done. That's where this comes in. And regardless of who you are or what organizational level you're in, this is an important skill. Now, how this comes, I like to tie this to 2 types of respect. The 2 types of respect is if the people working for you have respect for position, for authority, then regardless if they think you're a schmo or not, they're going to do what you tell them because they respect your position as the manager. Nothing to do with you, but they respect the position of authority. The other type of respect, which comes from you, is that you're the type of personality, the type of competence, the way that you treat your people, the way you hold yourself professionally, that people respect you. So someone who may not even generally respect authority may say, gee, you know what? I don't know why Mike's asking me to do this, but Don, the guy's always right. You know what? I'm going to do it this way, the way he said. That is respect for the person. Now, is some general tips on how to do this? Watch closely the people who in your organization that just seems to get things done and that people want to do what they ask them to do. Watch them closely. See how they do it. In other words, don't just listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they're saying it and how they're convincing other people. Certainly there are lots of other, actual tips, but the one I'm going to give you here, which is bigger than any of the rest, is pay attention to how other people are influencing you, and then add that to your own style of trying to influence others. Number 8, time management. As IT managers, and just given the topic, I'm going to assume most of you are or would like to be, is that time management comes from two perspectives. One of which is your own time management. If you can do things sort of better, faster, quicker, etc., that's a good thing. But also, as managers, we design the concept of leadership-based time management. In other words, you can do things that can, in fact, save time for the people working for you. Now, with this, managers of knowledge workers, and if we're in IT, we're all managing knowledge worker people. I'm going to give you one tip here. And what that is that knowledge workers work in time chunks. It's those 2 to 3 hour periods where they really get in the zone and they're really plowing through their work in a great way. You don't want to interrupt them during those times. If you know that your staff is enormously productive from, say, 8:30 to 11:30 in the morning, don't plan a staff meeting for 10 o'clock. Don't go in and bother them, because you're only hurting your own team's productivity and hurting basically their time management. So understand those blocks of times when your team is in the zone and basically bring them into administrative processes and meetings and such outside of that. Now this next one, spend time on and in your department. Many managers have their own deliverables as well as having to manage a team, player coach, so to speak. In those roles, in fact, this is what they call the consultant's dilemma. When they have a client, a consulting client, they want to give it 110% because they want the client to be really, really happy. The problem is, 3 months out when the engagement ends, is that they spent no time on their company, namely finding their next client. They spent all their time in the company, namely servicing their existing client. So they wake up one day, they have no prospects for their next piece of work, and their last customer is very happy, but there's no work for them going forward at that firm. So think of your job from two perspectives. What are you doing to help the department, as well as what are you doing to do your own? Now, these are various types of prioritized delegation. What prioritized delegation is when you delegate things to people, delegate them based on the ability to get multiple things done at once. In other words, let's say you're working on a project, and in order for your team's working on a project, and one person on your team is waiting for you to do something so that they can continue on their tasks, and then there's another task you're just doing for yourself. One of the concepts in prioritized delegation is that you say, all right, what things can be done in parallel? So you work for the other person, namely, you review or you do the work so that you can get the person working for you starting on a task. Then they're simultaneously working on that while you're working on the task that you're doing just yourself. That's one of the simple concepts in prioritized delegation. Number 9. See, it's a little bit like drinking through a fire hose, but we're trying to give you as much as we can on these 10 specific topics. Next, effective writing. Whether you're writing emails, status reports, business justifications to get money for your department, don't underestimate the value and importance of being able to write well. Now that includes everything from grammar to spelling to punctuation, to all those reading, writing, and arithmetic things. And the reason that this is so important is because it's a reflection of your abilities, your professionalism, your mental organization, how you can organize a topic, and your managerial competence. And I'll tell you, I'm one of those people who if there are 3 typos on a page, you give it to me to proofread, when I'm done with it, there are 4 typos. It's an incredible weakness of mine. I'm just not good at it. So as a result, as a manager, I always made sure I had someone on my staff that on things of importance, what I would do is I would ask them to do the review on it, proofread it for me before I send it out. It's not that I'm too lazy, it's just outside my skill set. Now, from your perspective is that let's say you're someone who's not heavily driven by grammar and things along that line. You don't know who is. There are people working for you, maybe your boss, who one of the most important things is that they look at it, they see typos, they just write it off as carelessness. Now, how do you improve these skills? 3 ways. First of all, reading. Read memos and see how things are done by people that are successful in your company. Is it bullet points or is it lots of prose? Know your manager. For me, for example, is that if I get 10 paragraphs of text, you're lucky if I get through the second paragraph. Me, I like quick bullet points. They're easy to read and so on. Training. If you're truly a bad writer, take a class on it. There are a million that are offered. And practice. In other words, is that, work on your emails, write them, write a diary at home and try to improve your language, etc. Because it's such an important business skill to you. Number 10, problem solving and decision making. If you don't, and this is a very key first point here, not making a decision is a decision. Let's say you have someone working for you, and you're thinking, oh, they're really good at salary planning time, I'm going to give them a raise, or give them a promotion. Should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And you never make that decision. You just keep thinking about it and thinking about it. Well, you know what? When salary planning time ends and you did not actually give them that promotion, you know what? The decision was made for you. Next is that as managers, and when next time you have a big problem in your department, you should sit back and say, yes, a big problem. Why? Because if there were no problems and everyone knew what to do on their own, they wouldn't need managers. So problems and decision making are the primary tasks that managers provide. So now this is a 1 to 7 list of basically the problem-solving process. You have to define the problem. The problem is X, Y, Z. Then you have to personally make the decision, do I want to act on that problem? If the answer is yes, then you have to define its scope, probably put together a business case, etc. Then you get approval for it. The next step is all right, what's causing this problem? So you have to do some root cause analysis so that you're not fixing a symptom, you're actually correcting a problem. You come up with various root cause problems that are causing this particular issue. You basically prioritize them. Say, yeah, we're going to pick on this one first. You define solutions, and then you move to solve that problem. This, in fact, here, this is a half-day class to go through this process, but just understand conceptually that problem solving is a process. It's not a specific piece or whatnot. If you can define a good process for you and your team, it makes it much simpler for you to make small and larger enhancements within your department. From here, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. And what that is that everybody on this call is smart. If you weren't smart, you couldn't have gotten through college in IT-related professions. You wouldn't be in the positions you are as IT professionals or IT managers. So if everybody in the room is smart here, then what differentiates you from others when it comes to the promotion to director from manager? Why are you going to get it instead of another person? The answer is it isn't your technical ability. It's your soft skills. It's your ability to deal with other people. It's your emotional intelligence. It's your ability to be able to successfully navigate discussions with people, about people, and so on by using, among other things, the 10 soft skills that we discussed throughout this presentation. What I'd like to do now is just say, I'd like to turn it back to Terry. I'd like to say thank you, and Terry, it's all yours.
Thanks, Eric. So we appreciate your attention, questions, and we hope to see you again at a future free webinar. Pay attention for these upcoming webinars in the IT Management Series. I think you'll find them really interesting. Second, keep in mind that we do have IT Management and Leadership certification classes that are on the schedule at New Horizons every month. And the free certification exam offer is still in place, so you might want to think about taking advantage of that. And thirdly, keep alert and keep in touch with your New Horizons reps for these new one-day classes that we're going to be offering online live. I think there's some very exciting topics that we'll be offering. So with that, I thank you again for your attention and participation today.